This week, President Trump continued his attack on Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 election and any connections with the Trump campaign. He tweeted about the investigation 12 times in 2 days, including this.
Study the late Joe McCarthy because we are now in a period with Mueller and his gang that make Joseph McCarthy look like a baby. Rigged witch hunt.
But why was Joseph McCarthy on the president's mind? Maybe because just the day before, retired Navy Admiral William McRaven wrote an open letter to the president, published in the Washington Post. It accused President Trump of using McCarthy-era tactics when he stripped former CIA Chief John Brennan of his security clearance. So this may be another example of what we might call the Pee Wee Herman defence.
You're crazy.
I know you are, but what am I?
You're a nerd.
I know you are, but what am I?
You're an idiot.
I know you are, but what am I?
So let's take a look at McCarthyism and what lessons it might have for today. Joe McCarthy was a largely unknown junior senator from Wisconsin in February 1950 when he was invited to give a speech at the Ohio County Women's Republican Club in Wheeling, West Virginia. It wasn't really expected to make news. McCarthy was a nobody. Only one newspaper reporter showed up to see what would turn out to be one of the most explosive speeches ever made. According to that report, waving a piece of paper, McCarthy announced to the women's group, "I have here in my hand a list of 205 State Department employees that were known to the Secretary of State as being members of the Communist Party and who, nevertheless, are still working and shaping the policy of the State Department." It was a stunning claim, a US senator alleging not only was the US State Department full of communists, but Secretary of State Dean Acheson, one of the architects of NATO and the post-World War II order, knew it and allowed it.
Even if there are only one communist in the State Department, that would still be one communist too many.
Weeks earlier, a former State Department employee named Alger Hiss had been accused of being a Soviet spy and convicted of perjury. One of his chief prosecutors was a young congressman from California named Richard Nixon. A few months earlier, China had fallen to communist forces. The previous year, the Soviets had tested their own nuclear bomb. McCarthy's timing for a Red Scare campaign was perfect. All of it was happening because of communists in America. The enemy within America was on edge.
Attention, attention. This is an official civil defense warning. This is not a test.
HUAC, the House Un-American Activities Committee, went looking for communists in industries including the movie business.
Everyone please sit down.
That small clique has been referred to, has been discussed as more or less following the tactics that we associate with the Communist Party.
Joe McCarthy was called before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, but despite his public claims, he couldn't give them the name of a single card-carrying member of the Communist Party in the State Department. McCarthy's evidence was tenuous. He took numbers of alleged communists from State Department reports which identified incidents of inefficiencies, not communists. Still, in 1953, McCarthy got what he wanted, the chairmanship of the Committee on Government Relations. The former World War II airman, nicknamed Tail Gunner Joe, now set his sights on even bigger targets.
I think we've got a much more serious situation now in communist infiltration of the CIA. Disturbs me beyond words.
Well, we haven't. The members of the committee have not been advised, and I do think that...
Oh, yes, I have. Oh, yes, I have.
Have we, the names and of the people...
I've discussed this matter with the members of the committee. I've also discussed with the members of the committee the question of communist infiltration of atomic and hydrogen bomb plants.
His assistant, a scar-faced young lawyer named Roy Cohn, was hazy on details.
The exact number that is loose, sir?
Yes, sir.
I don't know.
While there was evidence of some communist sympathisers in the government and in places like the movie business, McCarthy's claims were simply over the top.
That nasty McCarthy, an awful man.
America's best-known newsman, Edward R. Murrow, condemned McCarthy's tactics.
His proposition is very simple. Anyone who criticizes or opposes McCarthy's methods must be a communist. And if that be true, there are an awful lot of communists in this country.
McCarthy then levelled more allegations against the US Army and then against members of the Army's legal team. The Army's Chief Counsel, Joe Walsh, hit back.
Until this moment, Senator, I think I never really gauged your cruelty or your recklessness.
Let us not assassinate this lad further, Senator. You've done enough. Have you no sense of decency, sir? At long last, have you left no sense of decency?
It was an extraordinary moment, broadcast live on television. McCarthy had finally gone too far. He couldn't back up his claims. Allies deserted him. The Senate voted to censure him. Joe McCarthy had gone from demagogue to pariah in a short order of time. He was a broken man. His allegations continued and became more erratic, but he descended into the alcoholism that would kill him within 3 years. But remember that young scar-faced lawyer, Roy Cohn? Well, he turned from prosecuting communists to defending notorious mobsters like Fat Tony Salerno and John Gotti. And even a quarter of a century later, he remained a staunch defender of Joe McCarthy.
Communism was a threat then. I believe it's an enormous threat today, and I think he did a courageous job in trying to expose it.
And by that time, the 1970s, Roy Cohn had another client, one who considered him to be a mentor and who he taught how to use the law to get what you want and crush your opponents. That client's name? Donald Trump.
Donald Trump is probably one of the most important names in America today.